Early contests build momentum for 2024 contenders seeking the White House. C-SPAN offers unfiltered coverage of events leading into early primaries and caucuses. Get access to speeches and results with the free app, C-SPAN Now, or watch live on the C-SPAN networks.
Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to get into some of the big news of the week, which involves several promotions of top prospects, headlined perhaps by Grayson Rodriguez to Bowie, except Jordan Westburg also making the move from Delmarva to Aberdeen, Joey Ortiz going from Aberdeen to Bowie after a hot start, Johnny Riger, who continues to hit, going from Aberdeen to Bowie. There were a few others in there as well that we're going to note tonight. In addition, we're going to get into a favorite topic among Orioles fans, which is Chance Sisco and the catcher's position at the major league level, as the Orioles shuffled thing over the weekend by bringing up Austin Wentz and sending Sisco back to Norfolk. We'll also highlight some of the good performances of late by players who were not on our top 30 list, so a chance for some under-the-radar names you should follow to be mentioned on this show. But first, On the Verge is brought to you courtesy of Mercer Floor and Home Carpet One. Mercer is a third-generation family business that was established in 1959 and is located on Main Street in beautiful historic downtown Westminster, Maryland. For all of your flooring needs, think Mercer. So the big promotion of the weekend was Grayson Rodriguez going from Aberdeen to Bowie after a very impressive start at the high A level. As we're recording this episode on Wednesday night, Rodriguez is making his AA debut against the Hartford Yard Goats, the AA affiliate of the Rockies. So we'll probably have some live updates there once Rodriguez is finished. But so far, Rodriguez, as usual, hitting the high 90s, striking a lot of batters out in his AA debut. And that comes on the heels of a really impressive start for him at Aberdeen. So we had talked about this a lot on our last show, that we saw Rodriguez as one of the guys that could be the next big prospect to get a promotion. And that's ended up being the case. So, Bob, I'll start with you. I guess you weren't really surprised by this move, but what was your reaction when you saw it? And from the little bit you have seen of Rodriguez in his AA debut tonight, how does he look?
Well, certainly not surprising, but still exciting nonetheless, just to make it official. And he earned his way. I mean, he dominated high A ball, so it was only a matter of time. And Mike Elias did the right thing, made the move, and he looks pretty great. I mean, I don't know if he's a little jittery for, first start at the AA level and that much closer to the majors, but he just looks like he throws the ball so easy and it comes out 98 to 100 miles an hour pretty consistently. And he's got great breaking balls, great off-speed stuff. I mean, there's nothing not to like. He's let a few base runners on and one hard hit ball, but really he just looks great. He's dominating AA so far, so it's going to be exciting to watch him and the rest of that AA Bowie squad the rest of the season.
Yeah, Bowie's a madhouse right now of talent. With Rodriguez's promotion, he had literally nothing else to prove at high A. I was fine with starting him there, but I mean, 5 starts, a 45.5% strikeout rate, a .69 whip, 139 average against, and a walk rate of under 6%. Like, that's huge. All of his pitches are elite, and he's showcasing that elite stuff in AA tonight. I've went back and kind of been skimming the game real quick, traveling today, but skimming it, he looks like he's pitched at AA this whole year up to this point. I mean, he doesn't look phased at all. I don't think it. I mentioned last week's podcast that I was hoping DL Hall stayed in AA. I figured Adley Rutschman would stay for sure after all these promotions, but I was hoping DL Hall would stay because I wanted to see Grayson Rodriguez, DL Hall, and Adley Rutschman all in a Bowie uniform together. They can feed off one another. The other guys on this roster can feed off one another. They have Justin Ramsey, the pitching coach there, guiding the way. This whole Bowie roster and lineup with these 3 guys leading the way is like a massive cultural shift happening down in the farm system with the Baltimore Orioles, and they're winning. They're winning with personality and style and ease down there in the minor leagues, and it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, Nick, you mentioned that they're 18-5 as of Wednesday night when we're recording this episode, and they're in the lead right now over Hartford, who has gotten off to a sluggish start this year. So by the time this show ends, they might be 19-5 or within a few outs of being 19-5, which is really an impressive start to the season for them. Going back to Rodriguez, I did see his last outing in high A, which was against the Brooklyn Cyclones in Brooklyn. And it wasn't just impressive that he was hitting the high 90s with his fastball with no effort, and he's doing it late in his outing. But the movement on his off-speed pitches that night looks like something, and I think it was Nick who said this, looked like something out of a video game. And if he does that as consistently as he has so far to start the year, he's going to move through AA pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, all his pitches are major league quality from the looks of it, and the only question is the command. I think that's the only thing he's really got to work on is refining that command and putting the ball where he wants it when he wants it. But other than that, I mean, I feel like, honestly, you could put this guy in the Orioles rotation right now, and he's the second best starter. So that's just facts. Sorry, Birdland.
No, that's good, though. And this is a guy that I think now that he's in AA and having a good first start like this, like even if Hartford's not that great this year, it's a road start at AA. And we mentioned, and I was curious because you always hear like that jump from high A to AA is the biggest jump in the minor leagues. And we had Spencer Watkins on, and he kind of agreed with that as well. As he made that jump himself. But to see him kind of settle in pretty nicely and throw really well in this start today, is huge. I think this is a guy that Orioles fans can really sit back and put a lot of trust into. And you see all the guys, national level, prospect guys and girls from across the country right now watching this start in Bowie right now. Rodriguez has gotten a lot of hype up to this point for sure, but I think now that he's in AA facing good competition, that hype is just going to go through the roof. And you're going to see a lot more of that conversation of, is Grayson Rodriguez the best pitching prospect in all of baseball? Could be the number one topic among like the minor league ranks right now.
It really could. And it looks like his day might be done. He's finished 5 innings. He just struck out the guy looking to end the inning. He's got 71 pitches, 8 strikeouts in 5 innings, 2 walks, 4 hits. So maybe they give him another inning, but I'm sure they'll probably just let him go out on a high note here and get ready for his next one. Let's go.
Yeah, and if he does go on out after that inning, that certainly is ending on a high note. So Rodriguez is not the lone big name to go from Aberdeen to Bowie. Joey Ortiz, a shortstop, who we've talked about a lot over the initial weeks of the minor league season, making that move after showing some real strides at the plate. Ortiz, when he came out of the draft out in New Mexico State in 2019, was regarded as sort of a glove-first shortstop. He's flipping the script a little bit this year as the bat is coming along. And Nick, in a new piece over at BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com, really got into Ortiz's hot start and kind of, I think, broke down why there's good reason to hope that this hot start that he's had at the plate is sustainable. So, Nick, you saw quite a bit of Ortiz when he was at Aberdeen. What was your impression of his plate approach, and what do you expect to see from him at AA?
Yeah, I think I said our first episode after the season started that Terrin Vavra was like my new Orioles prospect crush after his hot start, but I'm falling extremely hard for Joey Ortiz right now. Like this is becoming my guy very quickly. It wasn't that great in 2019, to be totally honest. Like the offensive numbers just were not there at all, and so he really did fit this profile of glove first, kind of minor league depth shortstop that you want to keep around. But then fast forward to this year, and he's still only the 30th ranked prospect in the Orioles system right now. And we saw those quotes from Matt Blood before the season started about his brand new offensive profile. And now in Aberdeen, he hit 289, 7 doubles, 2 triples, and had a 139 WRC plus. Let me get that out the right way there. Huge numbers with Aberdeen this year, getting that Aberdeen to Aberdeen promotion in 2021. Then he goes to Bowie in his very first game, plays shortstop and then second base in a doubleheader. Pretty good day at the plate. I think it was 2 for 6 with 2 walks, so pretty good on base percentage there. Fantastic defense. I posted both clips. Both clips are in that article. You got to watch both of these clips. The first one, that's a major league play he makes defensively. Goes deep in the hole, snags it, guns it to first base on a line. The next one, he's in second base. He covers half the baseball field there to get to that ball. Love to see the range there. And then last night he hits a home run in Hartford, just destroys the baseball. This guy does not look like the Joey Ortiz of 2019 at all. And we've talked about before, he's probably the 6th best shortstop prospect in this system.
It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, that's insane. But speaking of Matt Blood, I know he was on the Give That Fan a podcast earlier this season, and he shouted out Kyle Bradish and Joey Ortiz as the 2 guys he would really like to shout out and tell Orioles fans to keep an eye on. And look at this. They're both quickly promoted and both showing why he's so high on them. Yeah, I mean, he just looks natural out there. I love the mustache he's sporting. Great infield, up the middle, defense and offense between him and Terrin Vavra. Bowie is just, God, they started off the season, we talked about it, where on the offense they didn't have that much upside other than Adley and a couple other guys. And now Caden Grenier is like blowing the doors off after I pronounced him dead, like he's the Undertaker coming back to life. I guess he's feeling that competition between Ortiz and Vavra and all these guys that are fighting their way up the system. So, and Robert Newstrom hit a freaking 400 million foot blast yesterday too. So Bowie, Ortiz, it's all good.
Yeah, and with Ortiz moving up, we also get the promotion of Jordan Westburg from Delmarva to Aberdeen. That was a potential move that we talked about a lot last week because it had not happened yet, but for a lot of reasons it made sense to us for the Orioles to go ahead and move Westburg up. And sure enough, that's exactly what they did. Westburg looked really good at the plate, Delmarva. And defensively, they moved him around a little bit because of Gunnar Henderson being at shortstop. And from what we saw of Westburg, primarily at third base, he looked good defensively. So an encouraging start for him. Bob, do you see that being sustainable for him at Aberdeen?
I don't know if he'll continue to keep an OPS above 1,000 for the whole season there, but I mean, I think he is a mature hitter. I think he was just a little bit above the competition at low A, and I think it won't be too much different at high A. I don't know if he's going to force his way all the way to double A before the end of the season, but he's a seasoned college hitter and showed great at the Instructs and the summer camp last year. And he just looks like a pro up there. And I expect him to hit around 300 and with some pretty decent power. So as long as he just keeps, doing his thing, I think we'll be happy. And maybe he gets a taste of Bowie in August, September, but either way, he'll start there next season, and then you're not far away from the majors.
Yeah, I think this was a pretty easy one. I think a lot of people would probably also want to see Gunnar Henderson moved up as well with Jordan Westburg, who Henderson just hit his, 8th home run or 8th home run of the year today. Just mashed the baseball, dropped the bat. I was waiting for the flip. He gave the look, but he didn't do the flip. That will come. But yeah, with Westburg, I mean, he had like almost 500 on base percentage down at Aberdeen, 13% walk rate. Those are great numbers. And you saw a little bit of the pop. He had that grand slam, like one of his first games of the season. I think he had 2 home runs with Aberdeen. So he's flashed that power potential a little bit. A WRC plus of 194, like that's absurd. 94% above average is just a monster. Yeah, those numbers probably aren't sustainable for sure, but now he's in high A and he's going to face these more advanced pitching, which I think is where he needs to be right now. I was fine with him starting in Delmarva as well because he hadn't played in almost 2 years, but I do think that if he plays if he's a 280 hitter, shows a little bit of pop and the defense continues to improve, I don't see why he can't end the season in Bowie. And if you're Bowie, you're kind of like Alabama right now. You're just replacing guys. You replace Kyle Bradish with Grayson Rodriguez. You might lose Terran Vavra, but you're going to replace him with Jordan Westburg. I mean, and with Westburg, for me, he was the 2020 draft pick that I had the most questions about and the most concern about because you always heard like he can do A and B really well, but we haven't really seen it yet. So we don't know if he can do that or not. And he's showing a lot of that right now, early on in his career.
Yeah, the raw power was one of the big questions I think a lot of evaluators had about Westburg was, you saw glimpses of it, but it didn't necessarily come across in his college stats at Mississippi State. Based on what we saw in Delmarva over, again, about 91 plate appearances, to hit 3 homers, to leave there as a .592 slugging percentage, that's just, a couple of numbers to roll off, but the power, it looks like, was there for him. And you started to get a little bit more of the sense that ceiling that you hear about with Westburg as him as a potential 2020 threat at his peak could be possible, especially because Westburg did get out of Delmarva with 5 steals and 6 attempts, which is good over the stretch that he was there. So he's showing speed. He's showing some power. As I mentioned, he got some time at third base, which is a position that some believe he may end up playing, but now we'll get to see him. We did get to see him at shortstop a little bit at Delmarva, and now we'll get to see him more at Aberdeen. So I think there's a chance to answer some questions about his defense as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think he'll probably be more of a second or third baseman long term, but you got to, play him as shortstop, while you can, while there's room to do so, and maybe he can prove that he can stay there. But back to his power, it's interesting that I think he was a guy that, when we drafted him, he was noted for having high exit velocities, and that screams like Elias must be thinking, hey, hit the ball hard. We just get you to lift it a couple degrees, and all of a sudden the balls are flying out of the park. And he obviously only has 3 home runs, but he's hitting the ball with authority, and as long as they can continue to tweak that, then he could be a 20-homer guy at the major league level.
I mean, he had 5 doubles and a triple as well. So, I mean, he's finding the gaps down there when he was with Delmarva. And I think kind of forecasting out, I could definitely see him moving over to second base, which would be huge. Like if you have, we haven't seen Kobe Mayo yet, but I go back to like that infield that I'm dreaming of right now is Jordan Westburg at second base, Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, Kobe Mayo at third base for the Baltimore Orioles in 4 years or something like that. I could see that, no doubt. And Westburg's starting to answer those questions. Gunnar Henderson starting to answer those questions. Like, it's so hard not to get extremely excited right now watching these kids down in the minor league system. Like I said last night on our Twitter page that I have not enjoyed baseball this much probably ever in my life, to be totally honest. And it's watching these minor league teams right now in the Orioles system.
And the GCL hasn't even started where all these young high upside guys and international guys are going to get started. So, yeah, it's all excitement. We saw these guys get promoted from Delmarva, and what do you know? There's T.T. Bowens and Greg Cullen show up and taking huge hacks and look like they could be players. So it's like a constant stream right now. And Elias still hasn't really got his teeth sunk into the system fully yet. Just wait till it's top to bottom, his guys. That's going to be great.
Rodriguez, Ortiz, and Westburg probably are the biggest names to be promoted since we were last on the air last week, but there were a few others we wanted to note as well, including J.D. Mundy going from Delmarva to Aberdeen, Johnny Reiser going from Aberdeen to Bowie. And Reiser, as I mentioned at the top of the show, since he was drafted in 2019, he has just hit at every level, showed some decent defense in the outfield. And Blaine Knight making the move from Aberdeen to Bowie, and perhaps for now quieting a lot of the concerns that I think many, including ourselves, had about him coming into this year after kind of an up-and-down 2019. So I'll start with Nick. Just general thoughts on those three.
Yeah, Monday is definitely interesting right now for sure. He hit a home run in his high A debut yesterday. He's really outperformed expectations. I figured by now he'd probably have like a 40% strikeout rate, hitting like 215 in Delmarva, but he hit 324 with more walks and strikeouts and 10 extra base hits. So I don't know how high his ceiling is, but for right now, he's a lot of fun to watch, and he's part of this huge 2020 undrafted free agent class that's just playing extremely well right now. Blaine Knight. Yeah, I mean, fantastic numbers. Almost 18 innings, 1 walk when he was with Aberdeen in high A, 16 strikeouts. He looked awful in Frederick. I had pretty much written him off. He was a group of guys, a small group of guys that I had completely written off right now. And there's another guy that we may talk about later on that I'm starting to be a little bit intrigued by again. Another guy who was in Frederick back in 2019, but that's great to see Blaine Knight. If he can come out and be something, that's special. And Johnny Reiser, yeah, I mean, this is a guy I've said before, he's a high floor guy, and all he's done is hit since he's been in the system. He's got a 309 career batting average in 79 minor league games with the Orioles right now. Good, solid depth piece. This is a guy you want to pluck from. I mentioned Robert Newstrom a couple weeks ago. If you can pluck from Robert Newstrom, who can hit almost 500-foot home runs outside of stadiums, and guys like Johnny Reiser, those are good depth pieces you want to have in AAA. And so if something does happen, you're not bringing up a Mason Williams or something again in the future when this team's ready to compete at the major league level.
Yeah, I'll start with Reiser. I mean, he went 3 for 5, and he had another hit tonight so far in his AA debut this week. So that's great. And I think Hudson Haskin will soon be in Aberdeen to take his place because he hit another home run tonight as well. He's killing the ball in single A, low A. Blaine Knight, I talked about him a lot last week on my scouting trip to Aberdeen. He's not listed as a starter this week for Bowie. Either is Kevin Smith. So that tells me maybe Kevin Smith will be soon promoted to AAA at some point this week or next week. And Blaine Knight, if you got him piggybacking someone coming out of the bullpen, that's pretty solid as well. And JD Mundy, yeah, I mean, just a big boy can hit. I mean, we'll see how long he can keep it going. It's good. Him and I think Dashback's been playing a lot better this week since Mundy got the call. So if that's the in what he needed to get going, then all the power to it.
Yeah, I think the one that continues to stand out for me is Reiser because, Nick mentioned 309 career hitter since he was drafted back in 2019, 846 career OPS. The bat looks really good. And when you have when you're an outfielder that can move around the outfield the way that Reiser does, and you have a good stroke from the left side, I think you got, you have the potential to be a pretty high floor player at the higher levels of the system. I do want to see him in center field a little bit more. Because we hear a lot about his speed. Zach Watson got the bulk of the starts early on in center field at Aberdeen, which makes sense. I understand why you want to run Watson out there. But I would like to see Reiser get a little bit more time in center field because based on what you hear about his speed, while it's not up to the level of, say, an Adam Hall, it's pretty good. And I think center field would be a good way for him to showcase that.
Yeah, I like that. You're seeing a lot of guys in the system. The Orioles put them in center field right now. Even your guys like your Adam Halls, and they tried Richie Martin. Unfortunately, it killed Richie Martin. But you're trying it with these other guys. Another guy we'll talk about later on as well too. But with going, I want to go back to Kevin Smith though for a second, real quick. Do you guys know? Are there like COVID protocols to go from AA to AAA? Because AAA is in that like MLB bubble. Because I don't understand why you would take Kevin Smith out of Bowie's rotation when he had a 1.06 ERA through 17 innings and 22 strikeouts and was pitching as well as he is. That makes me wonder if maybe he's going through COVID protocols right now and he will be promoted to AAA. I don't know. Blaine Knight, I can see piggybacking, work him 2-3 innings right now to warm into it. But the Kevin Smith one, I'm raising my eyebrows a little bit there.
He's actually pitching right now for Bowie behind Grayson Rodriguez. So I don't know if maybe that's just like we'll piggyback him now to set him up to be in Norfolk's rotation next week or something like that, or they just have too many good pitchers at Bowie, and
that's probably
maybe they'll take turns who starts, who relieves. I don't know, but I thought the same thing too before I just checked and saw that. So it was a good point, and I still don't know the answer.
Yeah, I do see that now. Oh well, there goes that dream. Soon enough.
Very soon.
So J.D. Mundy and Kevin Smith are two of the names that appear in Bob's latest Down on the Farm piece, his weekly look at the minor leagues. In addition, Adley Rutzman is in there in the on fire category, while in the ice cold, Terran Vavra, Jordan Cannon, and Isaac Matson make the list after sluggish weeks. Bob, anything you want to share about that piece?
Yeah, I had fun putting it together. It came out a day late because of the holiday, but Rutschman, of course, he's 0 for 8 since I put him on the on fire list. So he'll be back on ice cold next week, back where he belongs. No, I'm sure he's fine. He's still taking good at bats. Isaac Matson is really weird to me because he's just getting lit up like he's Matt Harvey or something, because he has given up, I think it's like 13 hits or maybe 9 hits. He's given up a lot of hits. Let's just say that in a short amount of time on the season, and I really hope he can turn it around because I know we were high on him all last year and continue to be, but it just hasn't happened yet. Cannon, yeah, not much to say there. I think he'll be in Delmarva all season as far as I can tell, unless they do like a whole catcher transition at some point. And Terran Vavra seems like he's back doing Terran Vavra things because he's got a couple hits today, he had a couple hits yesterday, so nothing to worry about there.
Yeah. Matson is weird because he actually, like, everything looks good to me. Like, I'm no scout or anything, but he looks good out there on the mound. He's this big bodied guy who looks like, and he's throwing upper 90s. I mean, 97, I think 98 miles an hour. Norfolk was in Charlotte. He got to pitch, and I think they have a radar gun. They're one of the good broadcasts that gives us the good information. And this guy is throwing hard, and he looks like everything looks like it's going well, but he's just not getting the results. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with there. I thought maybe doing the up and down between, Norfolk and Baltimore might have hurt him, but he's been in Norfolk for a while now, and it's not getting better, which is unfortunate. It's still 100 games left in the season. But Jordan Cannon, we talked about, I think, Bob, you're the one that made the note about his arm last week. I watched, I think it was last night's game. He was behind the plate, and the cannon it's there in the bat. He hits the ball hard. He had a few good hits, but I was scratching my head watching him play defense out there. I'm not gonna lie.
Maybe a transition to first base, maybe in his future, but at least the cannon, it's accurate on half the side of the ball.
Well, as talking about catcher defense is a good way to segue into our next segment, which is the Orioles, on the tail end of their losing streak, made a move at catcher, optioning Chance Sisco down to AAA Norfolk and bringing up Austin Wynns. In the week or so, days, however you want to term it, leading up to that move, there had seemed to be more and more notes from the Orioles core beat writers about how much that catching tandem of Pedro Severino and Chance Sisco has struggled since the second half of last season, both offensively and defensively. And Sisco now finds himself in Norfolk, and I think it's probably a move to go down and work a little bit of both offense and defense. I saw a quote from Brandon Hyde, I believe it was in the Baltimore Sun, although I'm sure it was printed by other outlets as well, talking about how he wants to see Sisco get back to his plate approach and driving the ball a little bit more like he did in the minor leagues and like we have not seen in the major leagues so far. Coming up, though, is Wynns, who we talked about this a little bit on our last show. The defense is solid, and I have to think that that's part of what motivated this move right now is let's stabilize the position defensively, because the Orioles do have another good catcher at Norfolk and Brett Cumberland, who I'm anxious to see at the major league level this year. But I can understand to a certain extent why they went with Wynns now, because you need someone who has major league experience who is going to make that position better defensively and knows how to work with some more experienced pitchers. So I'll start with Bob here. What was your thoughts on that move?
Long time coming, and I'm surprised it wasn't both catchers getting the boot at the same time. No, Austin Wynns off to a really good start with the bat for Norfolk, but it's Austin Wynns. I mean, he's, like you said, he's solid behind the plate. He can manage a pitching staff. He's pretty good about catching the ball, unlike our other catchers on the Orioles. And he's a nice stopgap. I'm not surprised that they brought him up either, just because he's hot. Plus, I feel like he's just a little bit more reliable defensively. Cumberland not going to give you much better than Severino or Sisco behind the plate, but I do like his upside with the bat. I do think we'll see him at some point this season. But also Wynns is a guy who Severino is probably still going to see the majority of the starts behind the plate. So you want to give Cumberland as many at-bats as possible at AAA. Don't need to block him just yet, limit his at-bats. So I completely understand the move. I'm glad it happened, and hopefully it's motivation for Severino. He can get going and get traded, and then Cumberland can come up as well.
Yeah, I don't really care that Wins is up, to be honest. I wish him well. He just doesn't excite me. But I do get why you want to bring him up, because he's been in the system for like 17 years. So he knows these guys. And he does have that reputation. I don't think you're going to keep him around as your AAA guy, your AA guy, your emergency catcher if you didn't really like what he brought to the table. Even if it's not the offensive statistics, his off the field stuff is probably what you want to see there. So that's good that he's up working with these guys. I honestly would much rather see Brett Cumberland. He has an on-base percentage of close to 400 right now in Norfolk. I am scared about how much he can hit at the major league level. Like, how high are those strikeout numbers going to be, and how high is he really going to hit? But I think he can give you, if you give him full-time duties or a good chunk of duties at the major league level, I think he's going to give you some really fun stretches of offensive play. Defense, we'll see, but I really do hate being negative, because I know that I couldn't strike out Chance Sisco if I had 1,000 chances, and I'm not putting on catching gear and crouching behind the plate and trying to catch anybody. So credit to Chance Sisco there, but if you are a regular listener to the show, you know that Chance Sisco and Pat Valleca really set me off just saying those names. And when I saw this, I got angry a little bit that he was going down to Norfolk. But that's fine. He's a veteran guy. But I wanted to talk about this. I created a power ranking of the catchers down in Norfolk. If anyone is interested, we have, after all the shakeup, there's a lot of shakeup. So we have Brett Cumberland at #1. That's your top option. You got Taylor Davis. He's actually been hitting the ball extremely well for Norfolk. Works the camera pretty well, so bonus points there. 3, I've got Nick Schufo with his broken hand or finger, whatever he has broken. He's #3 I would put in. 4 is Ryland Bannon with his strained oblique. He's 4 in the power rankings for just catcher in Norfolk. 5, I got Riptide, the mascot. And if you've seen Riptide, he's got a pretty thick lower half. So, he's not going to move very well, but he's a big guy, so he's there. 6 is Trident, the other mascot after the rebrand they did in Norfolk. I think he's a seahorse, so he's got a little quickness to him back there. And then 7, I have Chance Sisco. So if anybody was interested in that, there you go.
I saw the Ryland Bannon coming. I love it. I didn't see the mascots coming. That's pretty good.
I got the sense that something was coming up, like maybe Mike Piazza's rehab appearance, whatever year that was. But Mike Piazza now. Yeah. But the mascots, I did not see them coming that far up on the power ranking ahead of San Francisco. But I do want to talk about Cumberland for a minute, though, because we've discussed him quite a bit on this show. I think the profile of the bat has always been that the power maybe has not come along quite the way that many had hoped when he was originally drafted by the Braves out of Cal, I believe. But he gets on base. He knows how to work the count. He knows how to draw walks. And even if he's not really hitting for home run power, you can look at some of his swings, whether it was in spring training this year or some highlights from Norfolk, and he really can drive the ball. And as a left-handed hitter, can take the ball the other way sometimes.
Yeah, certainly. He's everything you want in a offensive-minded backup catcher / DH, and I don't see the harm in giving him a chance sometime soon. I don't know what the upside is or what you can even get from Severino or Sisco moving forward. I'm curious if we'll ever see Sisco in an Orioles uniform again, or if he's kind of going to languish in AAA and then get DFA'd when they need the roster spot, because I think a lot of guys are just going to pass him up very soon.
Yeah, and he's a switch hitter. Cumberland's a switch hitter, guys, so that helps as well. The on-base numbers, 377 career on-base percentage in the minor leagues. I think that's huge. I think the bat can come around. It seemed like he did a lot of work over quarantine and the break to get better there. I saw a lot of comments there. And I think it was John Mioli who got a camp report out of him that said the Orioles liked his offensive profile and the changes that he was making. So, yeah, I don't see any harm in bringing him up either, except maybe you do want to see him get on a real hot stretch like Wins. I think Michael Elias has made that comment. He doesn't want to bring you up unless you're hot. Or maybe I was listening to something else, and there's a lot to that, where if you bring a guy up when he's struggling, well, now he's pressing from the start on top of being nervous and jittery from making the big jump. But if you're hot, you're feeling it, you're in a groove. So maybe you bring up Cumberland then. But, yeah, there's just so much – there's good catching depth down the minor leagues that I think you can easily replace him. Even if you go down to Bowie, and a guy like Chris Hudgens, honestly, he's been playing pretty well. He's not getting a lot of base hits, but he walks a lot as well. And defensively, you can start to see some of the Adley Rutschman mannerisms that he has behind the plate, getting up, greeting guys at the pitcher's mound after each inning. He's been a pretty good defensive catcher as well, and a guy that I don't think you mind at all. He's a minor league phase Rule 5 pick this year. He's a guy that I don't think you mind at all putting in AAA and working with some of these pitchers as they move up the system either. So bring up Cumberland. There's no harm in it.
I will throw this out there about Cumberland, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this. So Cumberland will be 26 next month, actually later this month. Drafted in 2016 by Atlanta in the competitive balance round. Despite that, does not actually have a ton of professional experience. 339 career games coming into tonight. And the last season he played in 2019 only appeared in 60 games. So injuries have kind of limited his experience level a little bit. Do you think that the Orioles maybe want to see him? And I don't have a number in mind, and I don't know the Orioles have a number in mind either. But do you think the Orioles want to see him stay healthy for an extended stretch of time, get as much time at AAA down there as he can, and then bring him up? Especially with maybe the possibility that Pedro Severino does turn things around to plate a little bit. That you could get something from him at the trade deadline. I'm not counting on that, but maybe it happens.
Yeah, I think that could be the case, and I almost think it's more likely that Severino gets non-tendered this coming off season than traded, but you never know. I mean, he hit a home run last night. He has been walking more of late, so we'll see. Maybe he can catch a hot streak like he did in the first half of 2020.
Yeah, and I guess I just said there is no harm in bringing him up, but I guess the one hesitation I would have is that you can bring up like Ryan McKenna can go up and down. I mean, center field is largely center field minus a few adjustments park to park. But, with a catcher, you got to work with this entire staff and you got to get to know guys and their intricacies and all their pitches. And then you got to start scouting the opponents. So maybe if you bring up Brett Cumberland and he really struggles, you don't want to have to send him right back down to AAA. And if you bring him up and you get rid of Pedro Severino, well, now you're stuck with having to bring Chance Sisco back up, which I don't think anybody wants to see. And then after that, you really have nobody that I think is quite ready. Like I just mentioned Hudgens, but he doesn't have that much experience at AA level either. So then you're probably looking at the waiver wire for a catcher. So I guess that would be my only hesitation is, make sure he's healthy and then bring him up.
Yeah, and then this is a larger discussion, but I think we're all wondering when we see Adley Rutschman in Norfolk, especially if he continues to hit the way that he is.
Yeah, I know. I did bring that up in my Down on the Farm article this week, and I know you want to get him as much time with Grayson and Hall together as possible, but maybe DL Hall could go to Norfolk together, hand in hand, just like in our profile picture or our banner on our Twitter account. I would think another month or two at AA. I don't think there's any real rush because, no pun intended, because we know that they're not bringing him up this season, no matter what. So,
yeah, I was going to say that exact thing. That I think when DL Hall is ready to go to AAA, or when the Orioles are ready to move DL Hall to AAA, I think that's when you see Adley Rutschman go up as well. Because right now, I mean, who in Norfolk are you really eager to get? I mean, other than maybe Kyle Bradish, obviously, but. I mean, there's no one in Norfolk where we need Adley Rutschman behind the plate right now working with these guys to move them all along to the major leagues later on in the year. I don't think there's anybody at that level right now. So when DL Hall's ready, then I think you see them both go together.
That would certainly be interesting to see if we see Rutschman and Hall make that move to AAA. If not simultaneously, then perhaps within a few days or a week of each other, something to keep an eye on for later this summer, especially if they continue to produce the way they have at Bowie. Each week now on The Verge, we try to get into a discussion about a player who's outside the top 30 prospect list that we published back in January, and we'll update sometime in July or August, and talk a little bit about their performance, whether it's been the last week or so, what has stood out to us, or maybe it's just an individual game. We started this segment for the first time last week, and now it's a real thing because it's back for the second week in a row. And I'll get us started here with a note on Cameron Bishop. On Tuesday night, Bishop pitched at Hartford and was pretty much dominant. 5 innings, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, and a season-high 12 strikeouts. With that performance, Bishop now has a total of, hold on 1 second, 25 strikeouts in 20 innings pitched with just 6 walks. 4.43 ERA because he's had a couple of relief outings that have brought that number up a little bit. But Bishop is a guy who was really impressive back in 2018 at Delmarva. Barely walked anybody, pitched really well. 2019 went to Frederick and struggled a little bit. And in a trend that we've noted a few times on this show with some other pitchers, when they make that jump from Delmarva to Frederick, sometimes the ERA and the walk rate come up a little bit, and that was certainly the case for Bishop. This year, though, Bishop has been cutting back on his walks. Currently, his walk per 9 innings is 2.7 after he posted a 4.8 mark at Frederick in 2019 over 113 2/3 innings pitched. So the left-hander, off to a solid start after pitching in the bullpen and the rotation so far. That dominant outing, though, at Hartford on Tuesday being the big highlight of his season so far.
Yeah, if this pitching development in this new regime is going to not only draft their own guys and develop them, but turn these reclamation products in, like Cody Sedlock last year, Blaine Knight, and Cameron Bishop this year into potential studs or at least solid, depth pieces, watch out, baseball, because the Orioles will be dominant for years to come. I mean, I had definitely written off Cameron Bishop after his 2019 season. And, God, he looked like John Means out there last night. He, doubled his strikeout total in the season in 5 innings with 12. And, yeah, man, that changeup looked good. It looked really good.
Yeah, I mentioned, I think, briefly in passing in an earlier episode that I was interested in seeing Cameron Bishop, what he had this year, just because you mentioned back in 2018, he in low A, he was good, 9-7 with a 2.94 ERA. I mean, that's fantastic. I know he's a college guy, so of course he's probably a little bit older for the level maybe, but in Frederick, I hate to say this, but I'm kind of glad, there's still baseball in Frederick. The keys are still there, but I'm kind of glad our pitchers don't have to go down there and pitch in Frederick anymore based off what we're seeing. These guys who all struggled in Frederick in 2019 have all rebounded this year pretty much. And Bishop's definitely one of them. I mean, this is a guy that maybe is back on the radar, maybe not. I don't know. But I will note that our last week picks, right after our last episode, JD Mundy was one of our picks, and he was promoted. Felke Peralta threw 2 more scoreless innings, and Daryl Hernandez really starting to settle into play, even showing some opposite field power. So I think this segment is a good luck charm for these guys. So Cameron Bishop, watch out.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, who's the next player that could get good luck from this segment? I know Nick has someone to highlight.
Yeah, this is the type of guy that I actually had in mind when I pitched this idea. I'm going with Zach Jarrett, the Norfolk Tides, mostly because I want to talk about somebody on Norfolk right now because they're playing bad, whatever, and they're getting crushed tonight again. They play so well, win a couple games in a row, and then they just get annihilated. But Wander Franco couldn't beat the Norfolk Tides all by himself last night. But Zach Jarrett, just a guy who's really quietly at every level has done his job, puts his heads down and done his job pretty well. A career 267 hitter, and so far in Norfolk, he's 10 for 31, so a 323 batting average with a home run and a double. They've got him playing center field a lot out there at Harbor Park, and he had a really good catch the other day where he crashed into the center field wall. Came up a little gingerly, but he was all fine. He's been playing ever since. So I just think he deserves a shout-out. Him and Willie Yan are teaming up in this Norfolk outfield and surprisingly playing really well. So it's cool to see. Old Dale Jarrett's son out there, NASCAR guy turned baseball. It's working for him so far.
Yeah, it's cool to see. Norfolk's roster is just ravaged by injuries and promotions and whatever else is going on, especially to the higher profile guys. So it's definitely cool to see even JC Encarnacion, who's played for every single minor league team this year in the Orioles system. It's cool to see those guys get a chance, and Jarrett is running with it so far. I mean, he's hitting the ball good, even if it doesn't last or he eventually moves back down to Bowie. It's still a cool moment for him, and it's definitely cool to see.
Yeah, Norfolk has been. I think they're really struggling, but their roster has been hit hard by injuries and then players having to shuffle back and forth between AAA and the majors. That you have a guy like Jarrett who can come up in a pinch and step in and play as well as he has is impressive. And I know that he's, not in that conversation, the top outfield prospects. We don't know, how much time he'll get at AAA going forward if players do start getting off the injured list or come down from the majors. But to see him hitting as well as he has is impressive. So I know now that Bob has someone he wants to profile.
Yeah, I saw the name Xavier Moore pop up on my box score reviewing lately this season, and it's a guy who I know I saw that he had pitched at the GCL 2 years ago for the Orioles, but he wasn't really on my radar. But he's got 22 strikeouts in 12 2/3 innings with only, well, it is a lot of walks, but compared to the strikeouts, it's not too bad. 7 walks and 8 hits allowed. He's got a 3.55 ERA, and he pitched tonight for Delmarva. I don't know what happened. He only threw 30 pitches and came out after 2 innings, and he didn't strike anybody out, walked 2, gave up 1 run. So hopefully he's okay. But I was just doing some homework into how the Orioles got him, and he was actually a 16th round pick by the Texas Rangers in 2017. And then he was involved. Mike Elias traded for him. The Twins, on the same day, the Twins traded for him, and then the Orioles traded for him as well for cash considerations. And I mean, it seems like he's a guy with some potential. He's striking guys out. He has gotten ground balls to a decent amount in the past. It's kind of even so far this year, but I don't know, just a guy who is pitching well for single-A Delmarva, and just the way our pitching development has been improved under the Elias regime, it seems like they noticed something that they liked about him, and they're working with it. And he's 22 years old, so a tiny bit old for Delmarva, but hopefully he continues to work and gets to Aberdeen sometime this year.
Yeah, he has been impressive this year, and I think that, you always want to keep an eye on guys like that, like Bob said, where they come over from another organization since Michael Elias has come in, because obviously, no matter how the move is made, whether it's a waiver claim or, a small deal for cash considerations, if they're going to go out and bring somebody in, I think that there's at least something there that makes them intrigued. And with Moore, I go back to one of his better outings this year, which was on May 14th, 7 strikeouts and 4 scoreless innings against the Fredericksburg Nationals. Now, I know Fredericksburg is, we talked about Hartford early on. Fredericksburg's another team that has struggled this year. But the strikeout numbers with Moore have been really good. Hopefully, whatever happened tonight, he's okay and he'll be back on the mound soon. But if he can keep those strikeout numbers up, he's a guy that I think definitely warrants watching closely.
Yeah. With Xavier Moore, the one thing, I think it was after that big performance that you just mentioned, but the one thing that I always go back to watching him this year is what Stephen Loftus said, our colleague at BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com, is that it doesn't matter what level you pitch at, even if you're pitching in the JUCO ranks and not even a top JUCO program. If you're striking guys out at the rate that Xavier Moore is striking guys out at, like, that's a skill that's going to translate as you move up the system. So that's definitely a reason why. Just to keep an eye out if you're watching these guys, if you're watching Delmarva because you have your MILB TV package and you're not watching the Major League Baltimore Orioles because you don't want to be sad anymore. Xavier Moore is definitely a guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, so we look forward to continuing to discuss players like this each week with that segment, and we'll be back next week for our 46th episode. We're getting closer to that milestone number of 50, and I know the listeners have been a big part of that. Bob, Nick, and I have a few weeks to plan for what that episode might look like, and we'll have more details when it gets closer. But in the meantime, continue to check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for the latest articles on the Orioles, Ravens, college sports, and more. There's also been some good soccer coverage on there lately. Hop on the message board, join the discussion, and continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. We'll be back with a new episode next week. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to On the Verge.
It's easy to lose sleep when you're worried about your health insurance plan. But when you have a family counting on you to take care of them, having the right coverage is more important than ever. Anthem Health Keepers plans can help. With low to no cost coverage for you and your family. So you never go it alone. That's our Anthem. Click to learn more.
Early nominating contests build momentum for 2024 contenders seeking the White House. C-SPAN is the place for political campaign enthusiasts. with unfiltered coverage surrounding the early primaries and caucuses, as well as speeches from key battleground states. Whether you're interested in your state's race or want to follow all of the political events, you can get immediate access to what the candidates are saying, plus nominating results in real time with the free mobile app, C-SPAN Now, or watch live on the C-SPAN networks.